So I think there are 6 themes that occurred to me. I'll try and make sense of my thoughts. The first is around data, benchmarking, Janine standards will be our kind of way of remembering this. I think, Tim, you made the point really well. You can't really start till you have some data. You need to know where you are. And I think a lot of you made that point. So get going is the key. You need the data anyway. Even if you think you don't, the ISSB standards are coming in June. Loads of standards are already in place, even if you haven't heard of them. And as we've heard from our investors, our lenders, everybody, they're using them, even if you're not. So, you know, again, kind of, I can't hear you isn't really going to work. So I think that's an important idea. Another theme that came up, I think quite strongly, is this idea of partnership, collaboration. I can't remember which politician said, politics is pretty simple, actually. It comes down to who gets what and who pays, right? And I think there's no question that that is a big issue here, and we've heard that. Not just between business, government, and society, and let's face it, up to now, everybody's basically been blaming everybody else, but also in your particular industry between the owners, the brands, and the operators. So you've got another, and it's great to hear the kind of legal sense around that of it's about problem solving. And somebody said that. I think it's a great way to think about it. These things have to evolve, keep changing. Legal agreements are fine, but actually we can't get ourselves locked in. And so I think the law has a huge, huge role to play in this. And it's fantastic to see some of the initiatives in your industry, but generally, frankly. A third theme that Ishan spoke to brilliantly was, and indeed Nico as well, this idea of why are we throwing away all this value? We claim to be really only interested in value. We couldn't care less about the rest of the world up to now, the people on the planet. So why are we throwing away all this value? It's crazy. So this idea of the value hill, I think Nico called it, retaining the value by repairing it, making it last longer, keeping the plastic bags, Abby, is a much better way to do it. I'm keeping the value of what I've already created. Why are we just chucking it all away? It really doesn't make any sense when you think about it. So I think that's a very important idea. And the way to really retaining that is to recognize the complete interdependence between the E, the S, and the G, right? The E, a lot of people say, let's just separate the E, meaning emissions, from the E of environment and forget about the S and the G, right? So just to knock that one on the head, the EU taxonomy, which all of you doing business, any of you doing business in the European Economic Area, irrespective of your headquarters, have to comply with the EU taxonomy, okay? The E, in emissions, isn't even the only environmental measure, okay? There's biodiversity, there's water, etc. So this idea that somehow you can separate them is a complete misnomer again. There's a lot of myths in this world that's emerged from ESG 1.0, where we started, and we need to start knocking these myths on the head. So the social area is a huge, huge area, obviously for your industry. Who's looking after all your guests? People are. And the idea of the just transition is exactly that. It cannot be simply about we in the rich global north will basically keep going and everyone else is going to pay for it. Or within our own countries, some of the population is going to pay for it, and those of us who are rich enough will keep going. That's just not going to work. I mean, COVID, my colleagues in the life sciences at King's will say that's where zoonotic disease is coming from. When people have to move from where they are living because, for instance, they are inundated with water, they move nearer to animals where they probably shouldn't be, the animals are losing their habitat, they're moving closer to people, that's when diseases jump. That's pretty much what happened in COVID, right? Or it's a good example of a disease like that. So this idea that somehow we can disaggregate all of this is just, again, a real non-starter. So that's that is my third theme. Fourth theme, which I think is a really interesting one, which is around the opportunity you have. Because again, this isn't all about the downside and the risks, but Lord Teverson was saying the big challenges for the government are around buildings and diet, remember? And we touched on the idea that you as an industry are uniquely placed to really tackle those two major challenges. And I think that's really, really exciting. So that's my fourth theme. The fifth one is again something that our Global Youth winners touched on, which is, this is not about judgment. It's not about right or wrong. The truth is, here's a good example. A couple of months ago, I was rinsing out a yogurt pot at home. And I realized we've had the kitchen redone. I can never remember which side of the tap is the hot water and the cold, whatever. Anyway, so I realized I turned on the hot water. I'm rinsing the yogurt pot because I want to recycle it. And then I suddenly realized, oh my God, I'm using hot water. So am I doing better for the environment by doing this because I'm recycling the pot? Or would I be better just to chuck it away and not burn the hot water? It's confusing, right? The reality is none of us are going to be all good or all bad. It's trying to get to a net, not too bad, and maybe quite good, and trying to eradicate the negative externalities, as we economists call them, i.e. the bad things, and increasing more of the good things. But we'll only ever get to a net positive position if we're doing well. And that's just the reality of it, both in our own lives and as an industry and in our own businesses. So let's not be afraid to accept that it's fine, right? We have to learn together, and critically, we have to unlearn together. You're absolutely right. It's perfectly clear. Again, look at Nico's slides. What we're doing is not sustainable, even in a business sense, even if we wanted it to be, right? We're meant to be custodians of other people's assets if we're investors. They need that money in 40, 50 years' time. There's no point us destroying everything, maximizing the value in 3 years when they need it in 30 years' time. So we just need to really start challenging ourselves is the word you guys use, but I think unlearning is going to be a crucial part of what we need to do. And the sixth and final theme is around leadership. I think the Amsterdam example is an absolutely brilliant example where the municipality decided during COVID, when I guess they were fairly busy anyway, but they still decided, you know what, let's try and really, really expand this thing and scale it up. And I think leadership for me comes down to 4 key things in this area. The first is intention, right? This isn't a game anymore. If we want to greenwash, fine, go away and greenwash, but don't bore the rest of us, because some of us need to really get on with this and we want to get on with it. So I think intention is really, really important. Secondly, I would say that ambition, several people have spoken about ambition. Look at Amsterdam, a whole city going to become circular. That's fantastic. They probably won't get there very quickly, but they're on the journey, and a lot of this is about trying. So I think that's really important. I think leadership is about decision-making. Once I know what journey I'm on, I need to make decisions. To do that, we go right back to theme number 1, which is data. That's provable, trusted, rigorous, professional, just like my financial data. And lastly, I need to be honest. With myself, with each other, in our communications, whether that's marketing communications, we're trying to sell more guests, we still need to be honest. This idea of fooling ourselves is not going to work either. So with all that in mind, and I don't mean that to be a lecture at all, I think they're a reasonable summary of the themes. Is that okay? Do we agree that's not too bad? Okay. So, very quickly, 5 minutes. As an industry, where are we starting from? This is the exercise. How many of you actually in the room did this exercise? Just so I know. Terrific. Okay. So for those who didn't, essentially it's picking up on psychology. It's looking at 3 layers of understanding, if you will. The first is top-of-mind association. So in a minute, tell me what you think of ESG. Okay. It's non-verbal reasoning, which is choosing a photograph or a piece of music and explaining why, for you, that sums up ESG. And the last one was projective techniques. So I'll show you now, but if it was a social event, what kind of event would it be? And I think there's some really interesting learning. We're going to replicate this in all the other workshops I mentioned. We're going to replicate it before and at the end of each course that we do, so hopefully we'll all see you again. And maybe the next time you do it, your thinking will have changed a bit, and we'll keep a track of it all. I'm going to try and set this up as a long-running, longitudinal study for Kings, which I think could be really exciting. And we can see how the language changes as we go through this journey. So, top-of-mind associations. I'm going to use the other mic. Can you hear me? Yeah? No? Yes? Good. Okay. Just so I can move around. So you can see here, sustainability. Obviously, the count is down the side. I think we had, Vicky, we had 79, was that right? 78, 79 responses? Okay. So that gives you some sense. So it's about sustainability, but interestingly, it is about people, supposedly. But we'll come back to this point in a minute, because there's quite a lot of agreement, but also quite a lot of contradiction in these results. But it's interesting. It's all pretty well represented there, as you can see. And I think there's some pretty obvious things. There's a clear, I mean, this is like doing kind of factor analysis, if you will, on the actual results. So there's a clear grouping around the environmental focus. There's another one around social, which is good news. We'll be pleased to hear. Clearly, it's about regulation, and we probably learned a lot more about that today, which is terrific, and Janine standards. And this idea of partnership and collaboration. So a lot of you have touched on this. A lot of people are thinking that already, which is great. However, there is also a lot of conflict. There's a lot of confusion, a lot of disagreement. Okay? So on the one hand, people are saying this is great. It's about data. It's about measurement. It's about really, really evidence-based decision-making. Okay? On the other hand, people are going, actually, I don't know what I'm measuring. The definitions are all over the place. I'm really confused. Both of which are entirely reasonable positions to have. On the one hand, people are saying, you know what? I guess they're still kind of in ESG 1.0. If you go back to that slide at the beginning, they're kind of going, it's just the old game. It's all pretense. Let's just keep going. And other people are going, no. There's a real science-based targets here that we need to really think about. So again, there's opposites there. And other people are just going, whoa, this is enormous. And it is enormous. So again, we've got some potential differences of opinion there that we need to think about. And then this idea, is it a value or is it a cost? Hopefully, you heard enough to think today that it probably in the very, very, very short term, like 2 or 3 months, it's probably a cost, but so are lots of things. Okay? Ultimately, I think there is real value in it, and I think we can persuade ourselves that we can work towards that ideal. But you can see conflict there as well as, right. Onto the nonverbal reasoning. Now, this is interesting. You're going to see a lot of different, again, this is kind of grouping the various responses into these kind of buckets, if you like. So there's clearly something around custodianship, which has come up quite a lot today, which is interesting. I'll circulate these slides, by the way, so don't worry. There's stuff around nature, obviously. There is a recognition of the climate situation, but remember, climate is not all of the 9 boundaries that we're transgressing. There's biodiversity and all the other ones, so climate's but one symptom, if you will. There's this idea about social inclusivity, which some of us would be very pleased to hear about, because I think that's equally important. There's hard edge stuff. It's about money and buildings, which is actually great. Now, I don't know whether the money bit is good or bad, but at least people are recognizing there is a link, which, you know, is real progress, okay? But then we come back to this, oh my God, where do I start? I think somebody quite cleverly tried to use ChatGPT here to get an answer, and they came up with that. Collaboration, we've talked a bit about. That was one of my themes. Very broad scope. It is a very broad scope. But truthfully, at a company level, is it really that broad? It comes back to that slide I think I was saying at the beginning, where it's just the forgotten side of the company that we've decided not to count. Why? Let's start counting it. It's not really that broad if you think about it in your own, you know, in our own operations. Right. You can see some of the reasons here why people selected the thing. Now, very interestingly, when you go to the images, the people have basically fallen away, which is quite interesting. So I think we do need to keep reminding ourselves this is not just about carbon. It is not just about climate. The people really, really matter. It's a just transition, and the just bit relates to people. Okay, I think it's really important to remember that. Right, so we asked people, what kind of event would ESG be? What kind of social event? Would it be formal? Would it be informal, etc.? Okay, and you can see here the counts. So I'm going to show you the pictures in a minute. I think it's a pretty good indication of, again, not conflict is the wrong word, but the different places that we all start from. If I was going to this event, I would be wearing probably a collar and tie, beach shorts, having a barbecue in a conference center in the fine dining area of the conference center, probably, as you will see in a minute. Because, I mean, the differences between these are pretty big. So this is, on the one hand, what it is, which hopefully we'll be doing in about 5 minutes upstairs. But only one count less, it's also this. But then it's this. And it's also this.
Okay, I'll tell you which ones obviously I'd prefer to be at, but everyone should take their pick. And it's also this, which actually looks a bit dull, let's be honest. This is my favorite one. I don't know who did this, so this is all anonymous data, obviously, but I love this. Somebody asked, again, some kind of AI generator to generate this picture, and it came back as a picnic on a raft floating down the Amazon with 5 very diverse humans, which I think is terrific. So it's great. Okay, so the point really being that if you try and distill all this together, we use this device that I call it a footprint, if you like. It's or a mind print would be actually a better way to think about it. I should change that, actually. But if you try and distill all that into, so what does ESG mean? And what type of personality traits would it have, right? And clearly we have conflict, or we're not sure. It means regulation and management, but it's also really vague. On the other hand, it's clearly about collaboration, which is fantastic, and that's a really good place to start. And Ufi's done a fantastic job of bringing us all here, laying all this on, making us collaborate. And in case I forget to say it, thank you so much. And Ufi would be the first to say she doesn't work alone. There's lots of other people, so I'll say that for her too. Is it cost or value? Okay, and then think about the personality kind of equivalence of those, right? So you've got regulation and management is it's kind of scary, it's impactful, it's, I can't mess around with this stuff. But then if it's vague, maybe I can just keep pretending, okay, as a personality, if you like. Collective, acting together, I think that's very powerful, as I say. And then again, is it measurable or is it not measurable? So we are starting in a very different places, or in many different places. And I think we need to recognize that as an industry. Our aim with this course, which we are launching, I guess, today, Ufi, are we? Yes. Okay. Is to basically, as you can read there, is to forge a network of collaboration, essentially, in your industry around the world to get us unlearning, being ambitious, making mistakes, learning from each other. It's that simple, really. I mean, that's all we're really trying to do. Ultimately, we are hoping also to involve the operational management side of it in an extension of this, probably sometime next year, but more news on that later. The first thing is to get the leaders in this room to do the course. And just on that point, I think it's really, really important that we don't go, well, of course, I'm very busy, and I know this is really important, so I've got 4 of my people going, right? We have to be the ones to do it. We really have to. We cannot stand in front of them and say, we really care about this. Actually, I'm really busy, so you guys get on with it, and I'll see you later. It's just not going to take. And we all know that, really, in our hearts. So we need to be on this course. Hopefully, you'd find it interesting and enjoyable. I'll very quickly, and it's a minute, just tell you the kinds of thing we're thinking. Dana's here. Sarah, I think, is here. We'll be designing this course, as I say, as a result of these workshops, mainly today as well, but all these other 4 that we're doing. But broadly speaking, we're going to look at the science and overview some of the things that Nico was touching on, because I think it is important to bed this in reality. It doesn't frankly matter what the Republican Party say, or what I say, or what you say, or anybody says. This is happening. The science is real. The IPCC are real people from every country on the planet, okay? And they are saying this is happening. So we need to understand the real bedrock of this. It's a bit depressing, but we have to do it. But then we can quickly get on to, okay, so the opportunities and the growth, and we'll do a whole session around that. You see here 5 of these are essentially, or 3 or 4 of them, whatever it is, are essentially online. We also do some in-person stuff, and there will be a project and therefore certification at the end of this. But then once we've looked at and thought about the opportunities and the growth, we can then start to think about, well, how do I make all this happen? And you've already made great starts, many of you. So that's good. We do have a syndication or simulation exercise, which we are arranging for this course. And basically, it's a cool game, essentially, but it's about managing a hotel. I think in 3 cities worldwide you can choose, and you can start to try and make some of these trade-offs. Do I save carbon here? What happens to profit and loss, etc., which is quite cool. So I think that'll be quite instructive. And then, yes, lastly, this crucial area around resilience leadership and action planning, and how do I keep essentially a body of people happy with the idea that the only change is really constant change, because things are going to keep changing faster and faster and faster. So that's a very different management challenge. So that's something we need to think about. And then, as I say, we'll bring it all together in some kind of project yet to be determined. Okay, ultimately what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, look, there's a spectrum here. I think we've laid it out pretty well today. We can all either reject all this and say, you know what, I'm really not interested, and that's fine. I mean, that's a point of view. Or we can go, well, I'm resisting, but I'm dragged along. I get it. I'm going to have to do this. Or I can go, well, I'm still not sure, but actually, on balance, I can see maybe it's quite a good thing. Or actually, I'm getting quite excited because there are amazing opportunities here. It's arguably the biggest new business opportunity the world's ever seen, to reinvent everything. It's fantastic. So our aim is to say, somehow you've got to decide where you want to sit on this spectrum as individuals, as leaders. And you can either be on the compliance side, because you're going to have to do that, or you can be on the entrepreneurship side. And I hope it's clear what we will be trying to push you towards on this course, but obviously it's up to you. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. I know it's been a really long day. I am unbelievably thirsty, so I hope to see... Oh, please post your cards on the way out. Lucky's showing you, and Kate, if you have any more cards, please do that. If you don't talk too long, we're desperate for a drink.
All I wanted to say is, Marc, you don't have to go, but I just wanted to ask everybody to please thank Marc for doing an amazing job at driving the conference. Thank you very, very much. So, on that note, and thank you, of course, to our hosts, to our team. Thank you all very, very much. And to all of you for being with us. And please join us in the bar for a well-deserved drink now. So please, come join us now. Thank you.